Well, I never did like that the latch on the Novas, you can easily open them from the outside. So I'm going to show you a modification I'm going to do to the latch so that maybe someone else can do it on their Nova. Okay, here's the lock removed from the car. And it's pretty straightforward in the construction. And I'll explain to you how this operates. When you go to the front of the car, you stick your hand through the grill and you grab onto this latch and you lift it up and the hood pops open. As you can see, when you lift it up, both the secondary and the primary, which this is the actual lock, they move together. But if you just move it a little bit, you see that only the lock moves, therefore allowing the hood to pop open, but not fully come off because the secondary will catch it. Now, if you look at the bottom, and you will see that there's 3 cams, 1, 2, and 3. The lock portion, this, is the 2 first cams, this one here and this one here. The secondary, which is this part right there, is actually this cam, the very last one. So now, if you remove the first 2 cams, you also remove the ability to actually make the lock move. And only the secondary will operate with this handle. Now, how do you get it open if you can't move the lock with this handle? Well, you know, in today's cars, you basically pop open the hood from inside the cabin. So if you attach a cable to the lock, which is this here, you can actually open the hood from the inside. That way you pop open the hood by releasing the lock from inside the car, and the hood would pop open a little bit, but not fully, because this will still hold the hood closed. It's like a safety. Then you go outside to the front of the car and then you use the lever to open the hood. And that's basically the idea behind making this a little bit more modern, so that we can not have anyone pop open a hood unauthorized. Okay, so here's the latch again, and this time I'm going to show you I cut off the 2 first cams that I showed you goes to the lock portion of this latch. So basically that's one cut, and then the other one is cut right there. Now you notice I painted them. I painted them so that I can protect them from corrosion. We don't want any bare metal showing. And then you see the last cam. Now when I move the lever, you can see that only one of the cams is moving. And when you look at the lock itself from the top view and you move the lever, you only see the secondary move, and the lock is not moving anymore. Now to cut it, I just used the Dremel and some cutoff wheels. The cutoff wheel, I cut it from this side because I had access, and for this side, which is a little tight, I used the carbide bit. I made a notch and then basically bent it back and forth until it was fully cut and it fell off. Now when you do this, you have to attach a cable to the back, and there's 2 ways you can have the cable operate. Either route the cable into the cabin inside the car and you hook it up to some type of lever, like similar to the cars of today, or you can operate it like a powered trunk. And that's the method that I'm choosing. Basically, you get a solenoid, and the solenoid comes with a cable and a bracket. And when you press the button inside the car, the solenoid will activate. This will push in, pulling on the cable. And when the cable is attached to the lock, it will open the lock. Okay, well here we are with the lock, and as you can see, I welded, let me push it a little bit, I welded a little piece of steel to the back of the lock. So, and what I use is just I went to the hardware store and bought a mending plate, cut it to size, and then welded it on. I had to make a notch for the spring on the other side of this piece of metal so that it will go against the lock nicely. I wanted to make sure that I had a good, nice, straight edge so that I can weld. So now we proceed to the next step. Okay, well now we see that I installed the cable. Now this is 2mm brake cable that I'm using, and I basically just drilled 2 holes and routed the cable in and then back out, and then attached the cable lock on the end. Now the next step is to actually make a bracket so that I can hold the cable in place. So what I did was get a 1/4" mending plate, and I bent it slightly and cut it to size. And this hole is there because that's just a hole that they put on the mending plate, but I'll fill that up with weld. And basically I'm going to attach it there, so you can see I already prepped the area for welding, and I'm going to attach it and make the hole that I need on the mending plate for the cable. And then I'm going to attach the actual cable housing to the mending plate, and I made myself a ferrule for the cable, and goes on the end, and this will keep the cable from moving. So that's the next step. Okay, so I welded up that mending plate onto the latch, and I also welded up the little ferrule that I want to use for the cable housing. And basically just drill the hole a little bit larger than this ferrule and stuck it in there, and then just held it nice and tight with some vice grips and just did some welding. You can see that I covered up that hole with weld, and on the other side I covered up the hole that was there as well. Messed up my paint, but that's okay, I can always repaint. So that's the cable in there, so you can see how it's positioned. And I also gave, I don't know if you can see that, but I also gave the hole a little bit of an angle so that when the wire travels and it's being pulled, it doesn't start scraping up. I'm gonna grease the area as well so you can see the way the wire travels. Now in order to get this thing to bolt up to the car again, you have to do a little modification to the car. And I bring you to the modification. Basically, I just cut a notch, and the notch looks all funny because I cut it to bypass the areas of the weld that I did. It'll never be seen, so it doesn't really matter. So basically, the latch goes back on, and it bypasses the little mending plate that I put on the back here. So now when I put it back on, let's see if I can get this on there. So when it's placed on, you see, you don't even see it. And then that's what it looks like from the back. You can see that there's some space here, and the wire's right there. So that's basically the modification done. And I'm gonna put the casing on so that you can see what it looks like with the casing. Well, here's the casing attached to the bracket that I made, and you can see why I welded this little barrel there, and that was to hold the cable. Now when I install this in the car, the cable would have to be bent this way, and now that barrel adds support for the casing so that the cable can travel freely. Now, I got this idea from when I was installing the brakes, the emergency brakes on the car. And you can see that in the last video. It had a similar setup. And so this casing that I got, let's see if we can focus. There it is. You can see that it has a steel inner casing. And the cable itself is stainless steel. And so it's similar to the emergency brakes on the car. And that's how I got the idea to actually go ahead and do this. So it acts the same way. Now, if it didn't have this casing, the wire would actually do a sharp 90-degree when it's being pulled. With this casing, it actually makes the cable transition into this area. And this barrel holds it in place so that we don't have any movement in the casing itself. So there it is. That's basically how it's set up. You just route the cable the way you want. And as far as the other side, you just take that cable, either route it into the cabin and attach a lever just like modern cars, or as in my case, I'm going to be routing it to a solenoid. So now when I press a button, the cable will be pulled, the lock will be open, and I don't have to worry about any unauthorized entry in my engine bay of my Nova. Because no one can open a car now from the outside as it was originally. And I still have my secondary operating just as factory. And I hope you enjoyed this somewhat of a tutorial on this modification that I did to the Nova latch. Hopefully someone else can enjoy making it on their Nova.